Hello, everyone. So, get right into it. I've known since as early as I can remember that I'm attracted to men. It's not something that I woke up with one morning and decided to step into. And so I decided to follow Jesus 4 years ago in college, and that's where I had to really ask God, what does sexuality look like in the context of being who God created me to be? And it was a question that I had to really dig into, especially involved with ministry. I had to think about the implications for the rest of my life and how God could be a part of that in my journey. And so going into that as well, to preface, this is all stuff that God's taught to me in my personal walk, and so it's by no means the end-all be-all answers to any of these questions, but there are some perspectives that I think God has asked me to share with all of you. And so when it comes to sexuality, I think there's the most common question is like, is it wrong? Is it right? What's your view on gay marriage and all kinds of stuff? But I think bringing it back, God had me go through a lot of scriptures. He had me look through every single passage that even has a word homosexuality, anything related to it. He brought me to the New Testament, back to the creation account, and all over the place, so that I could really dig deep and do a lot of research, both through the scriptures and also looking at a lot of instances in my own life where I was asking God, how can I be one with you, and especially in this area that seems so far? And the short answer of it is I believe that there's nothing inherently wrong about being attracted to the same sex. Now that is a different thing, being attracted to the same sex versus deciding to do something with that attraction, so pursuing a relationship with someone of the same sex. I think in a very similar context, a woman does not choose one day to be attracted to a man. It is what it is. And that's something that you discover the more you realize more about yourself. And I think what constitutes, when you're looking in the scripture, homosexuality, there are a lot of, not a whole lot, but there are passages in scripture that specifically say homosexuality is sexual immorality. Sexual immorality being something that is outside the confines of what sex was designed to be. And sexuality, I think, is a manifestation of God's intimacy through a very physical expression. And so when we look at that in that kind of context, how can God display his intimacy and express that to us through another person? Now, when it comes to same-sex attraction, that's one thing that I was at a question about. It was hard for me to think, well, if I believe in a God that's all-powerful, all-loving, all-knowing, it's hard for me to really believe that God made a mistake in the creation and just didn't decide to fix it. And on the other hand, it's hard for me to believe in a God that is so vindictive that he decided to create these people and purposefully withhold relationships and intimacy from them and have them live through that. And so looking at that, it was kind of like, man, I really don't, that's not the God that I know in either of those fields. And so it had me questioning, well, what is the purpose of people, what's the purpose of LGBTQ people being created if there's this whole area of intimacy that's missing? And for me, God stopped me one day and he asked, what if you stopped thinking about what you're missing in this life, and what if you start thinking about all the more you have to gain if your only partner in this life is me? And it was like, wow, I've never thought about that, and it was really hard for me to grasp, but the more I thought about it, I thought, well, what if that is the case? What if LGBTQ people, I can always speak on behalf of being a gay person, but, and so what if for gay people, there's no inherent attraction for the opposite sex because there was no partner created for them in this lifetime? What if the only partner that they were destined for was God? And how could that change our perspective of intimacy with God and how that even looks? Because for me, even fathoming that idea, I thought, wow, if I was created solely for God and God for me, then how deep can that intimacy be? An intimacy that is deeper than anything I can find in any person in this lifetime or this world. And I just thought, wow, there's a very unique invitation into that. One that God has given to me the day I was born. He knew every element of my life, even though sexuality is one area that I felt like I couldn't be with God. And this is now the area that he was starting to restore. And the picture that he gave me was a sculptor that is in a museum preparing for an exhibition the next morning. And he spends hours creating all these different marvelous statues, and when they're finally done, he leaves. And each statue is a very unique expression of beauty that he sees. In the middle of the night, somebody who has a deep enmity against him breaks into his museum and defaces these statues. Arms torn off, faces scratched off, all kinds of profane things drawn on them. So when the guests come in the morning to view this exhibition, they look in atrocity and they look at these statues wondering, how on earth could this possibly be the same work as its creator who created all of these great statues and all of these great works? This cannot possibly be his. This cannot possibly be created by him. And the artist's response is not anger or revenge. The artist's response is heartbreak, because he had the purest vision of what these statues were created for, and now, against his will, they have been defaced and made into things that they're not supposed to be. And even in that, though, the artist doesn't just throw the statues away. He takes them and he uses all those alterations as a base of how to restore those things. And I think when we look at that in the context of the LGBT community, I think a community that has the capacity to have the deepest, most profound relationships with God is also a community that has been driven the farthest away and told that they can't be anywhere near the presence of the Lord. And I think when we look at the LGBT community, the community has historically taken on, they've prided themselves with the image of the rainbow. Of all the different things that they could have chosen to represent themselves, they chose the one symbol that represents a covenant between God and us. The covenant that says, this is my promise to you that I will not destroy humanity for its brokenness, and a covenant that is a symbol of my nearness to you. And I've asked different people, I've asked why, in the LGBTQ community, why do you find significance in the rainbow? Like, why do you feel that's important to you? And to be honest, most of the people I've talked to don't even know. They're like, I don't know, that's just, that's just something. And it makes me wonder, what if deep down in their souls there's a part of them that knows that they belong exclusively to God, but they don't know how to tap into that yet. And so all of that to say, I think God deeply, deeply loves the LGBT community. And I think the world in all kinds of ways has told them, well, since you can't find there was no suitable partner for you created in this lifetime, you're going to look all in these other places. And you're going to start pursuing these relationships with other people of the same sex and all that. And I think that's what breaks God's heart, because they were destined for him. And there was such an intimacy that was uniquely designed for them that they're missing out on. And so I think when it boils down to all of that, I think there is an invitation that needs to be made by each person. And it's this realization for me that has led me to commit my life to singleness. It is a hard call to make, but I think in looking at that, I'm really excited that I'm stepping into a kind of intimacy that most people can only dream of having. And I am incredibly blessed to be able to share what that looks like to other people. And I think God would really want more people to be able to step into that, or have invitations to step into that, and then to accept the intimacy that he designed for these people. And so that's kind of my background. Yeah.